Shalom, all praises to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. B'Shem Rachak V'dash. My name is Jacob from Plaintables Camp. And this lesson is on the Sabbath. All right. Just going over some precepts on where the Sabbath shows up. And so it's sort of has to do with the law also. So let's see what we how the Spirit takes us. All right, this lesson is not like to prove like which day the Sabbath is on. Sabbath is according to the new moon. All right, so this is say a basic foundational lesson on the Sabbath. So you put the word Sabbath in the scriptures, and these are the scriptures that come up. Now, when you put in rest or rested, that shows up in Genesis in the Shabbat. All right, it means to rest. Now, we're going to go down to where the Lord spoke to Messiah, Yahushai. This is Matthew 12:8. For the Son of Man is the Lord even of the Sabbath day. So look up Lord. 29:62, probably Caliphate or something. Oh, Corios, Lord. Caliphate, or Khalifa as head. Corios, to whom a person or thing belongs to, about which he is power in deciding, master, lord, a possessor, disposer, excuse me, of a thing, disposer of a thing, the owner, one who has control of the person, the Lord Master, a sovereign, chief prince, expressive respect, on a title, honor, expressive of respect and reverence, which servants greet their master. This title is given to God, the Messiah. To God, the Messiah. Well, Messiah, Yahushai, is a God, but we got Most High, Yahweh, and His Son, Yahushai. All right, Sabbath. Shabbat in the Hebrew. Let's look up Sabbath. This is Matthew 12:8. Yeah, Sabbaton. All right, which is this is a Hebrew word. It goes back to the Hebrew. It's Greek, but it goes back to the Hebrew. So it's root etymology, origin, Shabbat. All right. This is how we know that the New Testament writers of Greek were Israelites, whether they were Hellenized or whether they were just bilingual because of education. All right. The seventh day of each week. Sabbath, the law for keeping holy every seventh day of the week. Single Sabbath, a Sabbath day, 7 days a week. All right. And the Sabbath is kept on a new moon. Every new moon is a Sabbath. All right. Sabbaton. And it goes back to Shabbat. So see what the scriptures say about the Sabbath. So Yahushua said he was the Lord of the Sabbath day. So we're going to go down to Luke 13:15. And Yahweh, it's like, and the Lord, this is Yahushua, then answered him and said, thou hypocrite, doth not each one of you on the Sabbath day loose his ox or his ass from the stall and lead him away to watering? And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan hath bound, lo, these 18 years, be loose from this bond on the Sabbath day? And when he had said these things, all his adversaries were ashamed, and all the people rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him. Yeah, because he was working. He said, you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath day. So go up a little bit. All right. So Yahushua had spiritual power, and Yahushua even labored on the Sabbath day, all right, because he was doing good. All right, we're going to read that. I believe it says that in Matthew. Or I might say it here. Luke 13:14. And the ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation because Yahushua had healed on the Sabbath day. That's a nigga right there for you. he actually healed somebody from a sickness, and the leader of the synagogue is going to like, wait, you ain't supposed to be working today. You healing? That dude ain't the dude. If he ain't repent, the Lord going to destroy his ass. All right, that's a wicked statement that dude, this is the ruler of the synagogue made. All right, and healed on the Sabbath day and said unto the people, there are 6 days in which men ought to work. In them, therefore, come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath day. Only someone that's acting a fool would say that. Like, come back tomorrow. Come back when the sun's set, and then I'll help you out. Well, that's a demon. A demon would say something like that. All right. Let me get the one in Matthew. Therefore, the Son of Man is the Lord also of the Sabbath. Let me see. I think it's in 12. I think it's a little later. Yeah. Let's see. Strong's in red letter. Goes up. Sabbath questions. Matthew 12:1. Start from the top. At that time, Yahushua went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were hungered and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. Yeah, because you're technically in the field reaping crops, so you're not supposed to work. So this goes to show today, like they were under the subjugation of the Romans, well, tribute to the Romans, but they were free to practice their religion. Our ancestors were free to practice their religion. Today we're in even more of straits. All right, where we got to work on the Sabbath. All right, and it's not just because we're hungry. It's because we won't be able to be employed at all in this kingdom, because this kingdom does not follow the commandments of the scriptures. That doesn't follow the Sabbath, the holy Sabbath. It doesn't follow it. So we have to work, because according to Esau's calendar, the days of the week change every week. All right, and then it's still got inordinate days when holy days come up and Sabbaths come up, where we got to take off, and we won't be able to hold a job if we actually adhere to the law as it is written, as it was delivered unto us, and as we're supposed to keep. All right. So this is a prime example of the mercy that the Lord showed us. All right, because he knew the situation we're going to be in. All right, the things, as the scripture says, the things that were written aforetime were written for our learning. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, have ye not read that what David did when he was a hungered, and they that were with him, how he entered into the house of the power and did eat the shewbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, that was only for the Levites, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priest. Or have ye not read in the law how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Let's look up that word. So was David blameless? Yes, he was. So when we got to work on the Sabbath day, are we blameless? Absolutely. All right. We're blameless, even though we got to work on the Sabbath day. Now we acknowledge the Sabbath. All right. You got anaitios, anaitias, which means guiltless, innocent. Fault, author of fault. All right, so no fault, blameless, guiltless, innocent. All right, so you can take comfort on those words. Now we don't cook. No, in our homes we don't cook, but the main thing is, you got to work during the days that the Sabbath comes in, and we're blameless. We're covered by the blood of Yahushua. All right. If we are of the elect, we're covered. Yeah, now, if you're not of the elect, you ain't covered. All right. So we believe we're of the elect. All right. We don't know for sure, but we believe that the spirit of Yahushua worketh in us. But I say unto you, Shalakia, that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if ye had known, well, he's talking about himself, what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, ye would not have condemned the guiltless. Yeah, so they basically said they're sinners because they're plucking ears of corn. All right, I'm not going to say out of my mouth, not with wisdom anyway. I might say ignorantly, oh, I don't work on the Sabbath, because I'll be a damn liar. All right. So I take these examples that Yahushua himself used, and we're in an even more wicked situation right now than we were back then, and when we were under the tribute of the ancient Roman Empire. Now we're under the tribute of the modern day Roman Empire, all right, which is America, Babylon. For the Son of Man is the Lord even of the Sabbath day. So yeah, so if you say I'm a sinner, say, well, no, I got to work. It's the Sabbath day. I got to go to work, and I'm doing more than plucking ears of corn. That's still in the field. I'm in the field working, which I'm driving a car in the field on the Sabbath day working. All right. For the Son of Man, which is Yahushua, is the Lord even of the Sabbath. So if I need forgiveness of sins, I'll invoke Yahushua's teachings. I'll invoke His Spirit and say, Yahushua, forgive me, pardon my sins. All right, and it's already. And I don't necessarily got to say it out loud. It's already in my mind. It's already in my spirit already. All right. Let's go to the next precept. I think it was Romans. I wanted Romans the 3rd chapter. Now I typed in, do we make void the law through faith? God forbid. Let's start from 21. The whole chapter is good, but we're going to start from 21. Then we'll close the lesson out. This is Romans 3:20. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, there shall no flesh be justified in the sight, for the law is the knowledge of sin. Yeah, because we're in this flesh that can never obtain absolute perfection. The very thought of sin is a transgression of the law, because eventually we're going to go off. Evil thoughts, So this flesh is just wicked. And so we need forgiveness of sins. We need Yahushua. All right. So if you keep the Sabbath, and you say you keep, then I would question you. All right. On how you're actually doing that. That you're obtaining perfection in this law. But now, that was 3:20. Romans 3:21. But now the righteousness of the power without the law is manifest, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of the power which is by faith of Yahushua Mashiach unto all and upon all them that believe, for there is no difference. All right. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of the power. Yeah, so if you sin one, you sin in another one. If you sin this way, then you sin in the other way. So that means we're all on a playing field. So you might boast, oh, I can keep the Sabbath. I can keep the Sabbath perfectly, which I would doubt that you really were. But let's say you did, you still sinning somewhere else. So you're basically putting one law above another law. All right. Which, as is written here, and as Yahushua said, He's the Lord of the Sabbath. And let's not forget the examples of when, because of the current distress, our ancestors had to break the law, and they were blameless. They were pardoned. Their sins were clean. All right. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So this word all doesn't mean everyone on the circumference of the earth. Okay. It is talking about the Israelites. All right. That were under the law. All right. So slow down. All right. All doesn't mean universality, the whole entire universe. It just means the Israelites. All right. We were under the law. Now we're under grace and faith, if we're of the elect. All right. Now, if you're not of the elect, then you're going to be judged under the law, and you're going to be burnt up in the hellfire. All right? And that hellfire is going to burn for a long time, but your spirit will not burn for that remainder. Your spirit will go to the Father. All right? And you'll be waiting for your proper time to come back down to earth plane. All right? Being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Mashiach Yahushai. That's how we're justified. That's how we're made righteous. That's how we're made perfect, even in this corrupt flesh. Redeemed, redemption. All right? Let's see what that word redemption means. Apolupsis. Oh, excuse me, wrong one. Apoluprosis. Apolutrosis. Apolutrosis. A release affecting a payment of ransom. Redemption, deliverance. Liberation procured by the payment of a ransom. All right? It was Yahushua's blood. His death and resurrection sealed our forgiveness of sins and our entering into the kingdom. All right? And what? That also means simultaneously the other nations in servitude under us. All right? They're not separate. They're together. The promises have not been amended. I assure you, the promises have not been amended. The promises are what? For us to be a God unto, for Yahushua to be a God, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua to be our God, and we to be his servant, and for us to keep his ordinances, keep his commandments, follow and do his bidding. And he was going to feed us and nurture us and raise us up. That was the agreement. That's the contract. All right? Included in the contract. Look under the clauses and the definitions. Other nations in slavery. Look at the laws. Look at the prophets. Under the Israelites. All right? That's the whole contract. Not an amended contract. The whole contract. Where is boasting there? Hold on. To declare. I'm just like it. 25. Grace. That's a heavy word there. Meaning that we're practicing until we get it right. Which we're not ever going to get it right until we get to the kingdom. So we're practicing until we're saved. And then when we're saved, we're not going to practice anymore. We're going to have perfect. We're going to achieve perfection. To the clearness of that day. To the fullness come in. All right? That's in the kingdom. All right? By the grace, what? That's the Holy Spirit coming upon us and justifying us, teaching us, building us up. That's grace. Whom the power has set forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood. I was saying all that, right? To declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of the power. Yeah, the sins in the past, being forgiveness for things you did in the past, transgressions of the law you did in the past. 265G. We got Hamartima. Sin, an evil deed. Sin, evil deed. Sin is transgression of the law. Let's see it farther. Hamartano. To miss the mark, error, mistaken, to wander from the law, to violate God's law, sin. Right? Where there is no law, there is no sin. All right. So if he freed us from the penalty of the laws, all right, the penalty from transgressing the law, so he freed us from the penalty from wandering from the law. All right. So therefore, we can serve Yahushua correctly. All right. meaning keeping the Sabbath perfectly. All right. There's more. Okay, you gotta read the whole contract. Just don't stop. All right. What a lot of these pseudo Christians like to do is anti-Christians. They like to amend the contract. All right. You can't be a sodomite. You can't be an adulterer. You can't be a murderer. You can't be a wicked liar, evil, dumb shit. All right. You gotta get it together. All right. The guideline, okay, is the law. All right. But certain things we can't keep. This is why we have Yahweh Shai as our propitiation. All right. His blood, his death, and his resurrection. All right. Propitiation through faith in his blood to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through forbearance of the power. To declare, I say, at this time, his righteousness, that he might be justified and the justifier of him which believeth in Yahweh Shai. All right. So we justified by faith. This man we never met, we believe in him. We believe the words, because if we are of the elect, he opened up our mind to receive the things that we read and that we hear from the preachers, which are the prophets. All right. Where is boasting then? Yeah. So you circumcised, you keep the law. All right. You can't boast. All right. Because we're all have come short of the glory of the power. And he's not accepting the animal sacrifice anymore. All right. And we're all justified through grace by the belief in Yahweh Shai. That's how we're made righteous. That's how we obtain righteousness. Where is boasting then? It is excluded. By what law? Of works? Nay, but by the law of faith. All right. So the law of faith brings us in, and then we can practice. All right. We can practice the law. All right. Which what one of the first laws is what? Obey. Thou shalt have no other God before me. All right. You can read Exodus 20 and start the first chapter, first verse. Romans 3:29, and he therefore we conclude that 4:28. For we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. All right, 3:144. Dikaio, and is to render righteous such he ought to be, to show, exhibit, invents. Am I saying that right?
Events.
Reveal. One to be righteous, such as he is and wishes himself to be considered, to declare, pronounce. One just, righteous, or such as he ought to be. All right? Such as he ought to be. See, and that has to be in there, because you can say some of our actions are not righteous. Working, plucking ears of corn is technically a transgression of the law. But as we have been given grace through the faith in Yahweh Shai, this is the way the Lord programmed us to be, such as he ought to be. All right, which is good enough. All right, it's thumb in Yahweh Shai's eyes, in the Father's eyes, because Yahweh Shai is our advocate. He's our attorney. All right, so you can't just say righteousness, or such he ought to be, or such as he ought to be. All right, because we won't obtain absolute true righteousness in the flesh, but when we transcend and get those godly terrestrial bodies, all right, we'll be perfect. We'll be like Yahweh Shai. And his body, even though it was terrestrial and depowered in lower form, he obtained absolute perfection. All right, he paid for his sins, as he did at Solomon. He was put to death and he was resurrected on the third day. All right, let's move along. Now we're almost down to get the whole contract. All right, got to read the whole contract. Wherefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law. Without the deeds of the law. Is he the God of the Jews only? Is he not also of the Gentiles? Yeah, the Gentiles also. Yeah, because these are the Israelites that were Hellenized. All right. And they have the blood of Yahushua, and they believe also. All right. Seeing it is one God which shall justify the circumcision by faith and the uncircumcision through faith, which means the same thing. We're both going to be justified by faith, or we both be justified through faith, saying the same thing. Do we then make void the law through faith? The power forbid. Yeah, we establish the law. 24:7-6. All right. So the first thing that comes first is faith. And then when faith comes, okay, we know that it's a transgression, a grievous sin to be a sodomite. All right. To commit adultery, to drink the blood, eat much fat. All right. So we got histemi, stand, to stand, keep, intact, establish a thing, continue safe and sound, unharmed. Quality of one who does not hesitate or does not waver. All right. Stand before a judge, fix, establish, firm. All right. Do we then make void the law through faith? Power forbid. Yeah, we establish the law. All right. So we're not going to forsake the guideline, okay, the schoolmaster, as Paul teaches, just because we're not under the penalty of the law. And that's only if we're covered by the blood of Yahushua. All right. So that's the lesson. That's the Sabbath lesson. I hope you're edified. Shalom.